Welcome everyone to the third episode of Three Blondes, One Battle. Today, it's actually going to be Tara telling her story.
Hey, Nikki. Hi, Bobby.
Hello,
Hey,
I'm back.
she's back.
Glad your smiling face is back with us.
It's so much better. So much better. Still some issues, but way better than it was. So which I will take.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right, go for it, Tara.
Yeah, and so we did a little switch, and I'm excited to be sharing my story this week, and was just as a follow up behind Nikki, who shared hers last week. So excited to just dive in and talk more about just my journey with MS. In fact, I'm in this Bible study this year, and it's called Unexpected. And I started really reflecting on that and just thinking how that's the theme of the Bible. The Bible study is unexpected. And I thought how MS is really an unexpected disease. When we get the diagnosis, it comes unexpected, and so does everything I feel like about it. A lot of times when we get when we have an attack, it just comes on us, and everything about it to me felt unexpected. So I just, kind of start with my MS journey and where it began. I was a senior at West Virginia University, and it was in January. And so I thought, Nikki, you bringing up like what was going on at the time, that was a great way to kind of approach and look at what was going on at the time at the time of a symptom. At that time, I didn't know it was a symptom, but symptoms. So at that time, I was a senior. I was working, waitressing on my feet, working a lot, also having an intern in sports marketing, and carrying a full weight load and getting ready to graduate. So I was a senior. It was in the winter. So also important to know as I go into my story, but it was in January. And so there was a lot of pressure. I mean, I'm not a stressful person or an anxious person per se, but I internalize things a lot. So I think I process things internally. So it's building up. So subconsciously, I feel like I was under stress at the time, not knowing it. I was working a lot on both ends of the spectrum. And then I also was preparing to figure out what was going to happen with my life. That was the hardest transition of my life, probably going from college to real life. Like, what did that look like? Where was I going to move? What kind of job was I going to get? And so all that was in play at the time of my first symptoms. So going back in January, I remember being at a basketball game, and I had at that time been getting some headaches on my right side. Like, it was a weird headache. It was just behind my right eye, and I'm not normally one to have headaches. And so I thought that was a little odd and strange. And I remember being at this basketball game, and the lights kind of were bothering me. And for some reason, I don't know what made me do this, but I had put my left hand over my left eye because it was my right that was bothering me. And I realized that I was seeing fuzzy. And so to know too, I don't have glasses. I was 20/20. So all of you people out there that have, not perfect vision, you might say, oh, that seems normal, right? I never see clear, but I had 20/20 vision. So I never knew what it would be like for someone that might have a vision issue, that might need glasses or something. So I'm like, oh, that's weird. Like, I can't see out of my right eye. It was like I needed glasses. And when you know about vision, my other eye was compensating. So I would take my right hand away, and I could see fine, normal. I didn't really notice it unless I covered up the one eye. And so I was having these headaches, and then I went back to my roommate and said, I think I need to go see a doctor. And I ended up deciding to go to the emergency room, like the on-campus doctor, which was actually at the hospital, not necessarily just in a physician office. But I felt like because of the headaches and because my vision was changing, I'm like, I probably need to go see a doctor. So I went to the hospital with my friend's mom at the time, who took me in, because it felt like when you're in college, like, this is a little odd and scary. So went in and got some testing done. One of the tests they did was just an eye exam. And probably some other exams. I don't really remember the full scope of the exams that they did, but what I do remember is a very thick accented female doctor. She must have been, I don't know where she was from, Germany, somewhere not in the US. And so that was like, wow, it just struck me when she said from the, like the room, like, she just threw it out there like, well, this is optic neuritis and this could be MS. And so I was like, what? I had no idea what she was talking about. I'm like, never heard MS. You know, when you're young, I think your world is not in tune with different, different things that
Oh,
could
that's
happen.
really crappy. So she just throws out MS
She
like
threw it
that.
out there.
Like it's no big deal. It's like, oh yeah, you've got bronchitis. Oh, by the way, you might have MS. Like
Exactly what it felt like. Just a cold, like, yeah, I'm like, wait, what? She just said like in passing, like, oh, I think this could be MS. And then it was just like, she had left the room to make a call. It was just very bizarre. And I was like, okay, that's weird. And you have to know the 20-year-olds that are listening to this, we didn't have phones. I couldn't just like, oh, let me look it up and Google what multiple sclerosis is. You know, that wasn't a thing. So she came back and they wanted to do further testing. So I remember them saying, we want to get more testing. And at that point, my gauge of like anxiety went from like here to here, from like a 3 to a 10. And I was like, I need to get back home. Being a college student, right?
Yeah.
You just think, go home and see my parents and figure out what's going on with me. So
Did she explain like what MS was?
No, she didn't. It was just kind of thrown out there.
And
but it
just
was
left as is?
No, she's like never explained it really. In fact, my friend's mom, is a nurse at the time. And of course we do what we do as friends or moms. She's like, oh, you know, started explaining to me. It's like, no, you do not have MS. Like, this is not MS. Like, you do not have it. You're a young, healthy girl. There's nothing wrong with you. So that was like, kind of like ease my mind, which just helps, right? When we have a friend or a mom that comes in and is like, no, there's no way this is MS. So I was like, okay, you're right. Like, why? Like, what? This is not, there's nothing wrong with me. And so which was helpful. So I went back to Erie, which was not far from West Virginia, a couple hour drive. And I drove home and I proceeded to get an MRI. And I saw the ophthalmologist there, and he confirmed that it was optic neuritis. And at that time, he explained a little bit more like, hey, optic neuritis can either be caused by a virus or, then he did go, there is something called multiple sclerosis, and this can be a symptom of multiple sclerosis, but we need to order an MRI to know whether this is something like something cold-wise going on, or just a change in your eye vision, or let's get an MRI. And so I got the MRI, and my MRI at that time came back normal. So that was it. I didn't even see a neurologist. They were just like, the radiologist said, no findings similar to MS. So that was it. And there was nothing else on my brain MRI that would be concerning to the visual changes. So the ophthalmologist just basically said, you have optic neuritis, and we don't, it's probably just from a virus. Mm-hmm. So that really was the end of that.
Wow.
And yeah. So, but I know I went back. So after that happened, after that long week of being in Erie, I went back to school, and I remember thinking, I'm going to stop, talk to my parents, and just like, I think I should just stop working. So I stopped waitressing. And
wait, why would you stop working? So was your eye still?
Yeah, it was still bothering me, and I had headaches, and I just thought, maybe it's stress, right? I thought my headaches was from maybe something was going on with stress. And I'm like, I'm just going to stop working for the next 4 months so I can focus on graduating and finding a job, take one less thing off my plate. I remember my dad was like, oh, we'll send you money, for some of the incurring costs that you're not going to, have from working. So yeah, I stopped working, and I remember the optic neuritis resolved probably within about 7 weeks after that. It went away. Mm-hmm. So I really, other than the headache and the loss of vision, and it came back completely. So I just went on with life, never thinking about it really again. I just thought it was, I probably had a vision change.
Yeah.
From a virus. So At that point, I graduated college and got a job with Black & Decker and moved to Florida. So that would be my first. So I moved down south, and I felt so good down there that I remember I lived down there for a little over a year, about a year and a half. I remember biking and exercising a ton, running a ton down there, just feeling good now looking back retrospectively. But then I decided after a year and a half to take a job. I moved back to Washington, D.C. with a few close friends that I had up there that I moved in with, and I took a job with a startup company called Yellowbricks. And to go into Nikki's point about, well, what was going on? So this then comes up, it's been about the 2.5 year mark where I am about to experience another relapse. At the time, not knowing relapse, but symptom. And at that time, I was working probably 65 hours a week, a lot. Like I was getting up, working out at 5:30 in the morning, going to work, not coming home till 7:30 at night. So I was working a lot. I mean, I was probably 25 years old at the time. And I started having a headache behind my eye. Like, I'm like, oh, that's weird. Like I should start. So I started popping ibuprofen, like what's going on? And then noticed, because I was familiar with it from just 2.5 years back, noticed I had a visual change. So at that time, because I lived in DC, I was able to get an appointment at Johns Hopkins. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to the best neurologist and see what is going on. So I booked an appointment with Johns Hopkins at the neurology department and went in, and he, did a typical workup. So I got an MRI, and he did confirm that I was having optic neuritis, but with the clinical examination, no other things. And the MRI though came back as slight abnormal, but he would not give me a diagnosis based on that. There was not enough abnormalities that lend him to thinking, he's like, I can't diagnose you with just this MRI. He's like, so it was interesting coming from this doctor. So he asked me, he said, so if you're dying to know if you have MS, there's another test we can take, or you can just go on living your life, because, that diagnosis will stay with you the rest of your life if you get that diagnosis. But if you want to find out or have more clarity on it, what's going on or why you have this optic neuritis, we can do another test. And so that would be the spinal lumbar puncture test. So I, of course, don't like being in gray. I just want to know, like, well, no, I don't want to leave here not knowing I probably would like stew over it and would make him like, what do you mean? Like, do I have MS or not? Like, I kind of, because it was like, he wouldn't say I didn't, like it was, but there wasn't, because it was some apparently abnormal, there's probably a small lesion, small. But in order to get the diagnosis of MS, you have to have two different symptoms separated by time and space. And so I did the lumbar puncture, which like Nikki, when you said about the spinal tap, it really wasn't a big deal. Like it didn't hurt. It wasn't a big deal. But they definitely let me get up way too early. I did too much right after the spinal tap. And so I did have, I had the spinal tap and went home, and 2 days later woke up with a horrible headache that I couldn't move just for all weekend, but it's definitely nothing I would want to ever go and do again. So anyone that has to go through that, I would just say, definitely don't, you should rest for at least 24 hours after you get that lumbar puncture. But so I waited, and they came back with the test results, and there was banding in my spinal fluid. And so based on the MRI with its slight abnormalities, and then the lumbar puncture, and then with my optic neuritis, they diagnosed me with multiple sclerosis. So that really began that journey. Like, wow, okay. I think, I don't know how, other people handle it. I just remember wondering what that was going to mean for my life. Like really, like, when I got online, it kind of felt like when I was starting to research it, like I was going to be in a wheelchair. Maybe I wouldn't be able to have kids. I wanted to be a mom. Who would want to marry me with a diagnosis of MS? Like that is going to be someone else's burden to carry that they're not going to want to carry. So my mind kind of went right away to the worst case scenario. So that was the initial kind of slam in my face, like diagnosis. And then walking through that too, I mean, he ended up being my doctor for the next 5 years, and he was a really amazing, knowledgeable neurologist. But he approached therapies. So that was kind of my beginning journey of how am I going to manage my MS? And so one of the ways that they will present to you right away when you get diagnosed is traditional medicine route. And at that time, there was only 4 immunomodulating therapies, and they were, betaferin, Rebif, Avonex, betaserin, and then Copaxone. And so he kind of just, the neurologist just was like, well, here's your options and go research these. So I thought that was a little overwhelming that he would just throw these 4 names, drugs at me and just say, go figure out which one you want to be on. So I don't know how much confidence he had in the drugs, or if he, because I was like, okay. And I remember saying to him, well, I want to know what one you would put your daughter on. What do you mean? I want to know what you would think. And he wouldn't necessarily answer that. So I went and did my own research on the drugs, and, at that time, Copaxone, I felt like I worry it, like much like Nikki, I don't like putting things in my body that are going to make me, when I have to worry about other potential issues other than MS, like, okay, what drug am I going to go on? So that made me a little nervous as well, walking that walk and figuring out, like, what is this going to mean going on a drug? I ultimately chose Copaxone. I felt like, based on my research and reading the literature, that it was overall safe, a very safe and effective drug. So it was a needle that I chose to give myself every day. And so I chose that at that time. But it also started a journey of, just overall wellness. I remember thinking, I want to take care of my body. And luckily at that time, I was never in college. I never drank. I maybe smoked for like a couple months in college, like nothing major, but I feel like God protected me from that. I never drank, never smoked, never did drugs. So I think that helped with my overall approach of how was I going to manage this MS?
So Copaxone was 20 years ago. So what have you done since then?
Oh, and I'll go into it. Yeah. I mean, I stayed on Copaxone for 10 years. I was on Copaxone for probably 10 years. Often, I mean, there was a couple times where I took vacation drug, just got off of it because I was like, I'm tired of doing this. I did. And I also, not always was compliant all the time with it. I wasn't always compliant. There was a couple times I'll go into like sharing, maybe some of my different relapses that I went through, but there was a time where they wanted to switch me because I was having a breakthrough relapse, but I wasn't comfortable with going on the other drugs. So I'm like, well, I'm either on nothing or this drug, because I'm not going on the other ones.
So when you say breakthrough, do you mean like so you were giving yourself shots daily and then you would have an attack? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Right. So they would think they don't want you to have your changes in your MRI when you're on drug. They want you to think that it's going to stabilize
forever.
Well, not forever, but like it was the one that I had. It was within a 2-year period. I think they want you to go beyond 2 years at that time,
okay.
Hoping you can, or how significant is it? So after my optic neuritis, that resolved after like. Probably like 2 months, 8 weeks this time, I'd say. And so I felt I felt good, but now all of a sudden I was like in tune to my body. I was like paying attention to everything. And I don't know, other people listening to this, you may or may not be like that, but I think MS elevates and heightens your awareness of what's going on in your body.
I agree.
Right? Yeah. Would you agree with that, Nick? Yeah. And Bobby.
So I have a question for you, Tara.
Yeah.
So when you were on Copaxone, when you were taking it, like, did you deal with side effects? Like when you do injections, like, did you find like areas of the body that were a little bit harder to deal with when you do your injections?
I did. So interestingly enough, I ended up right after my diagnosis, I was a pharmaceutical sales rep and I interviewed for a job with Teva Neuroscience, and I ended up getting it. So I ended up selling Copaxone. So I entered into this world of learning not only about MS, the nervous system, but all these drugs. And so I did learn how to manage it well because I was immersed in patient care and advocacy. I could give it in my stomach. I liked giving it in my stomach. I liked giving it in my legs and my hips, my back arms. But I will say over the course of time, like, you know, there were things you could do, warm compress, you know, there's definitely things now with injectables that you can do, but I ended up having like atrophy in my legs, you know, where I don't like wearing shorts or anything now, just because I have bumps in my legs from giving it too much right there, which I don't like.
Did you ever get fleshy?
Get what?
You know, the symptom fleshy.
Oh,
Did
yeah,
you
the
get
fleshy. I never got that.
Really? That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I know. And it does. Yeah, I think it was like like in I think in the PI even it was maybe 5% of people get that, but I think it felt like more than that when I, you know, talk to people. Like typically people would go off of it if they had that. They didn't feel comfortable with that. I think, but one girl I remember even stayed on it, but she would literally like pass out every time she took it, but she would take it. I never understood that. Like I was surprised by that. But
wow.
Yeah, but that's probably why I stayed on it, because I never really, other than a little bit of, I had, one side effect that I had was, the glands, they would swell a little bit. Like I could feel like in my pelvic area and that area, I'd have swollen glands a little bit in the lymph node system, like swollen lymph nodes. I did suffer from that. And then the hardness in my legs. So, but I don't think I would have been able to stay on it as long as I did had I have had more symptoms than that. But I mean, it was pretty benign for the most part. I didn't feel different. I didn't, you know, have flu-like symptoms.
So you did that for 10 years, then what? Because we got 10 minutes left. I have so many questions.
Okay.
Like I feel like
so just to wrap this,
and then I want to know what your attacks are as well. I want to know what you're doing now. Like there's a lot in 8 minutes. So go.
All right. So listen, so I basically for the next 5 years was relatively stable. Sometimes I felt there was pins and needles in my feet that came and went, but overall, and I also suffered from fatigue more than now, but I ended up being diagnosed with mono. So I ended up having mono during those 5 years. So that was okay. I'm like, I felt that fatigue. Now I didn't know at the time, like, is this for my mono or from my MS? Or then I started researching and like, it's probably both. Like I'm getting MS, I'm getting mono because of the MS, and my titers never went away. Like I remember them kept on testing, and they're like, it's almost like I had chronic mono. Like and that I haven't tested though for mono since my 20s. So I don't know where that would be if I were to test now. But at that time, that was pretty significant. So I was learning how to manage like chronic fatigue. And I also had like just some different things that go along with Copaxone that are not necessarily significant relapses that take you out, but just overall underlining of the condition, right? So there was fatigue, a little bit of spasticity, tightness in my hamstrings, but I was still very active. I mean, I worked out a lot in my 20s, a lot. And at the time, I also was into, like that was big when you probably, I don't know if you've ever done it, Nikki, but the Schwank diet. So I was doing that. It was like, basically you're doing limited saturated fats, like it's like a vegetarian vegan diet, no saturated fats, no sugar. I mean, kind of like an overall, very strict wellness approach. But anyways, so I then go on to, so overall pretty manageable, except it was interesting. One time I went to my yearly checkup, and they do yearly MRIs, which you guys will know if you're having MS, you're probably going to your doctor and you're probably getting a yearly MRI. And I had a lesion that was active, that was in a area of my brain that was not clinical. I wasn't experiencing anything clinical, but he's like, if this wasn't an area of your brain, a different area, you'd be very sick right now, is what he told me. So I thought that was interesting that you could have this lesion in the area of your brain and things could be going on in your body that you may not even know. The disease is always, occurring and and going on. So he put me on pulse steroids and I ended up being fine. I had nothing ever end up happening other than me just being on steroids for 3 months. So then I ended up moving to Oxford with my husband, and we had our first child, Colton. Right after I had Colton, about 3 months later, I had a significant relapse. I had vertigo, and that is something that now will stay with me. I flare up with vertigo now since that time. And it's interesting. I think stress, which you've alluded to, Nikki, and I experienced that, are always indicators of, MS, but so has for me hormonal shifts. Like that was a big hormonal shift, right? I just had my first child, and for my first one, my other ones I was able to nurse, but I was not able to nurse for my first child. So I don't know if that contributed, because I did not have relapses after my second and third babies. But the other thing that had happened during that time is I was had a female diagnosis that got me really nervous. I was in the doctor's office and they're like, you had an abnormal pap. And all of a sudden that's when the vertigo came on. And so I don't know if my body responds not well to stress. Like immediately in the doctor's office, the room starts spinning. So isn't that weird about MS? Like all of a sudden you're
so weird. Yes. That is exactly how it is with me too. Like I have to be so chill. Like I just have to be. I have to walk away from people. I have to shift gears, if life is getting too happy. Like sometimes if I'm making like a lot with them MLM, like I just got to get out. Like, what about you, Bobby? I feel like you're stressed.
I feel the same way. Like, I feel like stress is such a feeder. But also like when you're like on highs, like feeling good, that even like, I noticed that triggers things for mine. Yeah. And it's hard dealing with stress. Like stress is a part of our life, and trying to figure out how to keep it, stagnant at like an okay level. It's tricky, not gonna lie. It's really tricky. And I feel like all of us go through these highs and lows and trying to figure out like, oh, I think I got it figured out. And then bam, something happens. So then you're like, oh, well, maybe not that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So and in fact, I'm going through a very stressful situation right now, life circumstances. And in the past month, my eyes been bothering me, my optic neuritis. I've all of a sudden have weird ear things where ringing is in my ear, and I feel like I can't hear out of my right ear. And so I'm going through a stressful situation. And by the way, it's winter. So the other thing, I don't know if I've themed this, but in the winter, all my relapses have been in the winter, in January and February. I've never had a relapse in the summer.
I haven't either.
Yeah. So, I don't have thinking about it. No.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, for the most part, like I said, just to like wrap up, like you were asking about to kind of cover all those, the journey and the relapses. So that kind of leads, Colton, I had the vertigo, recovered from that. I then go on to have my second and third child, and overall still was on the Copaxone, kind of got off of it, but overall, nothing significant like that as far as like a relapse. I did start experiencing some mental clarity issues as I've progressed in this disease. I'd say just maybe in the past 4 years, I feel like, as far as like processing information, and it might be because now I stay at home, and I think that's allowed me to manage my MS well, because I'm able to eliminate certain stressors in my life. Like it's not that staying home isn't stressful, but I have a routine every day. I know everything's, I don't have to think about it because it's a rhythm of life that I know. And so, but mental clarity has been an issue, and UTIs, but nothing significant other than my vertigo, which has come on a few other times in the past 4 years. I have had progression of my disease in my MRI a little bit. There's more burden of disease, but I have dealt with vertigo off and on, spasticity, tightness, and I get tightness around my period. So hormonal for women out there that are women experience MS different than men, I think. And so I think
tightness, like the MS hug tightness, or what type of, no?
I get more like tightness in my hips where I can just feel like stretch, like it just like
Huh.
my hamstrings and my hips. I don't know why.
I can definitely relate to that one.
Do you guys get the MS hug too, though, when you're stressed?
No.
Sometimes not. I don't get it quite a lot, but I do experience it. Like my last one, like I remember was last month, but I don't get it like continuously.
Oh
Like
man, that's something I get quite a bit. It's just around your rib cage. It's just like somebody's squeezing you, and you're just like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I can't get a deep breath in. No, it's not COVID. It's the MS hug. Oh, we can just. Well, we
So
should
yeah,
wrap
yeah,
it up.
I wrap in the basically now 3 years ago I went on Ocrevus, so I am on medicine, but I've also still work out a ton. I'm still able to work out, in God's grace and mercy in my life. I mean, I just still always give him all glory for just how I handle it, and just able to know that he's in control of my life. I think that takes stress off me. Like, okay, God, you're in control of my health, of my life. But I'm on Ocrevus now, as well as just managing my health with exercise and diet. And I can always step up more in that area, especially when after I talked to Nikki, I'm like, man, I really need to like step up a little bit more on some of the things I could do. But
No, but I think that your journey, I think that you've shared a lot as far as like, you've been through things that I'm sure people listening are going through right now. And then also giving them hope, because there are a lot of people out there that believe in the drugs, and that, and that I'm sure it helps them hearing that you have been doing it, using pharmaceuticals.
yeah, and I feel like both. And I will say, like, I'm grateful. Like I'm able to have a family, right? I have 4 kids now. Yeah, I'm able to manage my stress, my health. I've done it through multiple different ways, but drugs have been a part of it, but as well as making sure, like you said, we don't want to be overweight. I don't think we want to drink a lot. We don't want to smoke.
Yeah.
We don't want to do drugs.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll talk in other episodes kind of how we manage as far as like, meditation or a reflection, or, the
Yeah.
powerful words, just all sorts of things,
Right.
that different techniques that you can add into your lifestyle to manage when life does happen. Just so it doesn't spiral out. So like Tara was saying, we're very aware when it comes to MS. That's why I've always, it's the cliche of blessed with MS, but honestly, you do have to pay attention to things that the average Joe doesn't have to pay attention to. And a lot of it is health related. So thank God that, we have to pay attention to what we put into our mouths. We've got to pay attention to what we're drinking. We've got, so yeah. So there's definitely like a part of that is really cool that, we're very in tuned when you're managing MS. That is definitely a blessing. So we'll definitely be back next week. Bobby's going to give her story. But
it's gonna be a story.
oh man, I know.
I'm excited to hear your story too. Yeah, for sure.
It's gonna be crazy. Every time when I share it, people are like, what? And I'm like, I know. I don't believe it myself sometimes.
Oh my God.
Just be ready. That's all I have to say.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing, Tara.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I was happy to be here with you girls, ladies. Again, I look forward to our Tuesdays time, and I hope everyone else well.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, have a great rest of your day.
All right, guys. See ya.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.